A big business story that is brewing that could have repercussions right around the world, folks, and it stems from China. Its economy is set to take a hit after its once primary property developer, Evergrande Group, was ordered to liquidate following a High Court ruling yesterday. Now, its debts totaled, get this, $500 billion. Joining us is the Chief Investment Officer at the Motley, Scott Phillips. So what are the repercussions here, Scott?
Pete, good morning. The short answer is we don't know. The long answer is hopefully not too much. Let's rewind, was it 2 years ago now? When Evergrande first teetered on the edge, financial markets went into meltdown, and the implications, the concern about the implications are very clearly this. Evergrande itself is a big deal inside China. Outside China, as you say, $500 billion worth of debt owed to a range of creditors inside, and most importantly for our purposes, outside China. The contagion effect. Think about Silicon Valley Bank, think about Credit Suisse, think about others we've seen in the credit markets. The real concern was, and it is to a lesser degree these days, what will happen as these debts unwind. Hopefully, properties can be sold, value can be realised, but if there's a meaningful amount of impact for a particular or any number of particular institutions, it's the contagion effect. Who does Evergrande owe money to? Who do they owe money to? What will it mean for the solvency of its own lenders? That's the real risk. The old domino effect is what we're mindful of. It does seem like we're through the biggest part of that concern, but there is no guarantee, and these things tend to prop up from nowhere sometimes.
Yeah, what's the genesis of this, Scott? I mean, how does one accrue $500 billion worth of debt?
You would have to ask the Chinese Communist Party, Pete, because that's this is Evergrande. It's the old Chinese economy in a single company in a lot of ways here. It's a communist country in theory, but embracing a market economy. The Chinese Communist Party wanted lots of building, they wanted lots of activity. The old infrastructure-led development was exactly what the Chinese wanted to do. They wanted to modernise their economy by spending an absolute truckload on infrastructure and then move that across to a consumer-led economy. They're still trying desperately to do that. Evergrande, we've heard about the stories about the ghost cities, the ghost developments, train stations, freeways, all that kind of stuff. And on top of that, the cost of debt and the weakening of the Chinese economy itself. You need a strong economy if you want to take a lot of risk, particularly on property, and have people buy those properties from you. If you build a whole lot of stock and no one's there to take it off your hands, well, we know exactly what happens there. We've seen so many Australian builders, large and small, go broke over time. Yeah. The challenge for the Chinese economy, mate, is that because it was this command economy, they wanted a few large organisations they could effectively control. Nothing untoward. They've been very clear about it. The problem with that is if you have a few big institutions, if one of them goes bust, you're at a much, much greater risk than one of a large number of small organisations.
So what's Xi Jinping's role here?
There's two things. There's an economic concern and there is a confidence or a kind of a political concern, I suppose. We know that China's economy was said at Davos only last week, the week before. The Chinese economy growing over 5%, which is good, but not as fast as the Chinese government wants that economy to grow to continue that modernisation process. So two things. China wants to remain a centre of world economic growth and activity. They're not likely to have that change anytime soon. The sheer size of that economy is going to probably keep it in that position. But it wants to be a trusted investee. It wants money from overseas. It wants to be a continued larger part of the global economy. Now, Xi Jinping has a role to play to make sure that happens. The problem for the Chinese government is how do you bail out a business with $500 billion worth of debts without jeopardising your own economy, your own currency? It becomes a much thinner tightrope to walk. Now, it's a command economy. The beautiful thing for Xi Jinping, as much as we may not want it here for Australia, is he gets to pull the strings directly. And so there are many, many more options available to him than would be an Australian Prime Minister or a US President. Whether it's enough to get them out of trouble, whether they have to have a reckoning of sorts for a while. The Chinese stock market and the Hong Kong stock market, for what it's worth, both having a really torrid last 12 or 18 months as well. So confidence with a capital C is what the Chinese government and the Chinese economy needs to restore if it is going to continue that growth.
Scott Phillips, good to chat as always. We'll chat to you soon.
Thanks.